Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Here to talk all things hockey are your hosts, Brad Crisco, Ryan Hanna, and Evan Lobsinger.
The Detroit sports hype arc of Jameson Williams catching that long TD pass from Goff to hitting the button that blared the new LCA goal horn is just a testament to, for the first time in, I can't remember how long, Detroit sports are actually fun and good.
It is nice when Detroit sports can all get together and it's not over shared misery.
How are the Pistons?
Why we got to do that?
Okay, fair
It
enough.
hasn't started yet, so far so good.
Okay.
The hype around this team, we were talking before we started recording that it is amazing how much more engaged everyone is when the hockey is good and fun. And that sounds like such a simple statement, but I don't say that lightly because Red Wings fans are among, if not the best fans in hockey. And I genuinely believe that. Like, this is a fan base with history, with roots, who has new players to be excited about, et cetera, et cetera. And so the Red Wings fans always show up. They always do. But it is just to another level when this team is, to borrow something from the Leafs world, which I am loath to do, hashtag actually good. Like, they're not stumbling into wins. It's only 4 games into the season. But the 3 wins that they have been tilting the ice in their favor, and you can see the best players that they brought in and have developed or traded for or whatever are making the difference. And you feel like the Red Wings have just now, for the first time in a decade plus, tapped into what we've been watching all the other teams in the NHL do, or most of the other teams in the NHL do for a long time. Like, good players equal good results, and it's just a bizarre calculation that's playing out in Hockeytown.
This is the first hot start to the season the Red Wings have had since the rebuild started that doesn't feel unsustainable.
Yeah, it doesn't feel fake. It doesn't feel like we're about to come on here and warn everyone that misery is coming.
Yeah, it's like, enjoy it, be happy, but the Red Wings got outshot by 15 shots again, so maybe the cliff is coming. All 4 games, Detroit has dominated for stretches, and in some cases, the entire game. Even their loss against one of the projected top teams in the NHL was probably about a 50-50 split in terms of who was controlling play that game. Just New Jersey had a Jack Hughes, Detroit didn't. They dominated Tampa. They dominated Pittsburgh for everything but the third period, but I think that third period was more self-inflicted than anything else. And Columbus, who is the only weak team they've played, they dominated from start to finish.
Crazy, but good. Folks, welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, here to talk to you about all things Detroit Red Wings hockey, which is fun and good, the world of the NHL, and lots more. I am one of your hosts, Ryan Hanna.
I'm Brad Crisco.
And I'm Evan.
On this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast, we are going to be reviewing Detroit's last 2 games, wins against Columbus and in Detroit against Pittsburgh, the many storylines that have come out of those games, and the fact that the Red Wings have a leading point score across the entire NHL now on their team, which is
the
his face is on the stat page as the leading point scorer. We're going to be talking about anything and everything to do with those games, as well as taking a look ahead at Detroit's upcoming 2 games against Ottawa, which is a huge one, and then Calgary on Sunday. We'll be talking about specific storylines, players who have, shown up really well. Joe Veleno, I think, deserves a look. Maybe hasn't been talked about enough for how well he's risen to the occasion in some ways. The Patrick Kane storyline continues, though some people may hate it, some people may love it. He is still connected to Detroit. We'll take a look at how Red Wings prospects are doing and then cover some NHL news, all before we jump into overtime. Before that, I want to let you know about a couple things. First of all, Winged Wheel Podcast Night at the LCA is Saturday, November 4th against the Boston Bruins. What that event is a partnered event between us, the Winged Wheel Podcast, and the Detroit Red Wings, where we host a live episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast at Little Caesars Arena before the game. And it's going to feature Ken Daniels, lead announcer for the Detroit Red Wings, as well as, we're now okay to announce it, I talked to Ken the other day, Chris Osgood, which is going to be a fun one. And I think it's Chris's first time. We've talked to him plenty, but this is the first time having him on the show.
Correct.
Which will be exciting. So you get to come to that live episode, hear us, but also more importantly, Ken and Chris. There's going to be a Q&A session, a meet and greet. You can have Evan, Chris, and Ken sign your stuff. There's going to be merch, prizes, food and drink is going to be available to purchase as well. With each ticket, you don't actually only get access to the live recording and the game itself, but you also get a custom Winged Wheel Podcast Special Edition beanie that is co-branded with the Detroit Red Wings logo. So it's a officially licensed Detroit Red Wings Winged Wheel Podcast beanie that is limited to the first 400 ticket buyers. I think we are under 30 remaining for those. So if you want yours, get yours ASAP. We are limited on those, so be sure to get your tickets fast. The tickets to the game themselves are discounted, and a portion of the proceeds from every ticket sold benefits the Jamie Daniels Foundation, which is why we're doing all of this. So it's a fantastic event, not just the live show, not just the game itself, not just the beanies, but you're also supporting a fantastic cause. So wingedwheelpodcast.com/Red Wings, or go to the link in the description of this episode to get your tickets. Again, they are running out. Secondly, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast if you want to support the show. Everything that we do, including running those Winged Wheel Podcast nights, is done through the support of our patrons. One of the benefits that our patrons get is we are giving away 2 tickets to every Red Wings home game this season. The vast majority of them are going to our Patreon supporters. Just made the post today on how to sign up to enter for those draws. So patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast to get access to that benefit and many, many more, which we'll talk about later. All right, let's jump into it here. Detroit is now 3-1-0. They lost to start the season against New Jersey and have won 3 decisive, or at least somewhat decisive games, as you mentioned, Brad. The 2 most recent against Columbus and Pittsburgh. So why don't we start with that Columbus game? It was a 4-0 win, a James Reimer debut shutout for Detroit, which was, I think James Reimer played well, but I think also the Red Wings really worked together to keep those pucks out. You saw a little bit of like debut. He was swimming across the crease, James Reimer. He made some big saves, but so did, Shayne Gostisbehere, for example, who I think had himself an excellent game at both ends of the ice.
Yeah, he was one of our targets for low-key, more impactful pickup than maybe he was given credit for, and early in the season, that seems to be holding true.
So Gostisbehere opened scoring with his first goal as a Detroit Red Wing off of a really nice play from Joe Veleno, who went down the left side and passed the puck back up to the top of the slot where Gostisbehere fired it home. The next goal came in for Detroit from Michael Rasmussen, who stuck with the puck. JT Compher factored in on that one as well. Was just like JT Compher, we talked about this last episode. He has been, I think, good through and through. One of Detroit's, I don't want to say more underappreciated players, but the way he intercepted the puck at the top of the zone, like I've seen a few people say JT Compher has really stood out for them. Dylan Larkin then scored on the power play from Seider and DeBrincat. Larkin streaked in and split the D. Classic Larkin. I think he loves to pull off this move when he can. The quick forehand, backhand, tuck it 5-hole move, which gets the goalie in transition sliding across the crease. And another power play goal after that as Andrew Copp buried a Lucas Raymond rebound. And that was Detroit's 4-0 win. Their power play was buzzing. They just dominated what was a weak Columbus team. Weaker than I expected, honestly. But they dominated that game through and through. And we said coming into it that, I think, Evan, you mentioned that every single team is a measuring stick. Like, yeah, the Pittsburgh game is going to be how do you measure up against a team who's trying to make the playoffs? But the Columbus game is, if you want to be a team that's fighting for the playoffs, you have to beat the Columbuses decisively. And I think that's what they did.
Yeah, I don't know if Columbus had an off night or what, but their big guns were essentially invisible for almost all of that game. Patrick Kane had one half decent opportunity, but that was kind of it. Even a guy like I thought David Jiricek maybe would stand out a little bit more, but he was mostly invisible and didn't have a lot of impact. But hey, the Red Wings got to win those games. If the other team's not going to show up, you can't play down to them, and the Red Wings absolutely dominated that whole game.
At the end of the game, though, a 4-0 game, Detroit's leading late, things get chippy, which we've seen a couple times now, which is a unique position to be in. Usually Detroit's being chippy because they're pissed off, but it's going the other way. Klim Kostin leveled Cole Sillinger. Clean hit, came in. Sillinger was fine. There was nothing dirty at all about the hit. And Erik Goodbranson, as is the case in the modern NHL, I really don't like this, but I understand that it's going to happen. And roles reversed, I'd probably want Detroit to do it. But Goodbranson stepped up and said, hey, you hit our young star. You have to drop the gloves now. This is kind of one of the reasons why Klim Kostin was brought in, to be able to make a statement like that and then also drop the gloves after, so it's not, Larkin breaking his hands or something. And that was a great tilt between Kostin and Goodbranson. Like, those are two
big boys.
Oh my goodness.
Big boys.
Godzilla, King Kong, like the any one of those punches that connected would have killed me.
Those are cinder blocks being thrown.
I mean, Ryan, the Klim Reaper was right there.
Okay, so I have seen the Klim Reaper, but it's pronounced Klim, so you have to say the Klim Reaper, which I don't think...
How many European names have we Englished up, and this is where you draw the line?
He specifically requested it, but no, you're right. The Klim Reaper is a sweet nickname. You know how I know that Klim Kostin is coming as advertised? Because the moment I posted the clip of that fight, 3/4 of the mentions and the quotes were Oilers fans pissed off at Ken Holland for letting him go. Like, livid with Ken Holland for letting him go. That was a huge hit, and that was a great tilt. Like, that was a heavyweight fight, and that's the kind of stuff where it doesn't matter on the scoreboard. No, it was still a 4-0 game in the end, but that's the kind of stuff that keeps the energy, keeps the vibes in the room going, keeps the boys motivated on the bench. And you might say, God, these are meaningless platitudes and they don't show up in the analytics or anything at all. But think about the feeling around Red Wings hockey right now. That contributes to it. And that's what motivates the team to keep coming together as a group and have an identity. Also, it's good to know that there's someone on the team who can drop them like that if someone takes a run at, DeBrincat or something later on.
Let's your stars be stars.
That's right.
They got someone else who can answer the bell.
That doesn't stop Dylan Larkin from trying to fight people, of course, which you love Dylan for. But
fast forward to the next game.
yeah. So that was a huge tilt. All in all, I liked the contributions from Gostisbehere, especially that game. Like, I know the Reimer shutout is one of the most notable parts, but Gostisbehere, saved goals at his own end, made some key defensive plays, and was just contributing offensively. So that was a hell of a performance by the Red Wings to dominate in that regard. The next game against Pittsburgh, and we knew that was going to be a real test because Pittsburgh, they added Erik Karlsson. They loaded up essentially to try to make the playoffs again with whatever time is left with their core, including 101st best player in the NHL, Evgeny Malkin. I feel bad. Like, making that list is an unforgivable or a very, thankless task. But it's funny that this has happened to Malkin twice now.
I know.
Wait, they've done that list twice?
No, a long time ago, the NHL tried a top 100 players of all time thing.
Mm-hmm.
And, Duncan Keith was on there and Evgeny Malkin wasn't.
I remember that one.
And now ESPN has recently dropped another one, like top 100 players in the NHL. And like Seth Jones is up there.
Wait, in the NHL or all time?
In the NHL.
Oh, come on.
And Malkin, yeah, anyways. So it was very, very, very funny. Again, I do think it's a thankless task. And I know Wyshynski they've dropped a pod where they explained why, and I haven't been able to tune into it yet. But it is funny that it's happened to Malkin twice. Anyhow, Detroit 6-3 over the Pittsburgh Penguins. It wasn't an easy game to win, I'll say. Like, less than a minute in, Evgeny Malkin, who else, scored on Detroit. And for the first, I would say half of the first period at least, Detroit didn't look good. And I was thinking, ooh, is this the first little look we're going to get in at Detroit's, how they stand up against better teams in the league?
I mean, it was right after 2 games after they beat Tampa. But yeah, it was a sluggish start, probably the best way to put it. Mm-hmm. They looked slow. Pittsburgh had more energy, which should never happen at home. But you could tell very quickly once Detroit found their feet that the tide shifted. And from about that 10-minute mark in the first period until the second intermission, it looked like Pittsburgh and Detroit belonged to different leagues. Detroit was all over them, and the shot margin was different. The score went from 1-0 to Pittsburgh to 4-1 Detroit in that stretch, and it was everything we were hoping to see Detroit carry over from the Tampa and the Columbus games, and in some instances a bit more.
Yeah.
It's, again, especially because, you can say what you want about Tampa's goaltending, but they're still a good team. But Tampa still has a goaltending issue. I mean, DeBrincat bounced one in from the blue line that game, let's not forget. Pittsburgh was healthy, had their starter in net. Crosby and Malkin are firing this year, so this was going to probably be their best test of, the week, to narrow it down a little too specifically. But, yeah, they stepped up. Some old habits crept in the third period. Mm-hmm. That whole prevent defense, which never works in football and apparently does not translate to hockey very well and hasn't over the last 8 years. But, old habits die hard.
The thing that I talked about at the top of the show, which was Detroit has been able to tilt the ice in their favor, was really on display in Pittsburgh. Because it's one thing to do it when you're, dominating Columbus or Tampa's somewhat poor goaltending that game is going to deflate them. But Pittsburgh came out hot, and Detroit's best players, especially that first line, you put them out on the ice and they come in and they make an immediate impact. And we'll talk about the goals and such in a second, but they're creating chances. They are generating the offense and they are controlling the puck. And I mean across both teams, like not just they're the primary puck drivers for Detroit. I mean, they are taking the puck away from the Pittsburgh Penguins, who by all rights should be a decent team in the East, and they are controlling play. You talked about, deserving to win. I think Money Puck has the deserve to win-o-meter. Most games, they are coming out ahead on that. Funny enough, I think actually Pittsburgh had the measure this game overall, but that's because I think the first half of the first and then what happened in the third probably tilted it. But yeah, Detroit's they are getting that play driving from more than just their best players, but their best players are often doing it. And in this game as well, the defense.
Well, this is where Lalonde deserves a bunch of credit. And I know it's way too early to take a victory lap, but I know this is an opinion a few of us held very strongly in the offseason once the roster was set, in that Lalonde has created very favorable matchups for the Larkin line because he created a second line of Copp, Comfer, and Rasmussen that specialize in defense, shutting down the other team's opponents. So, Comfer, Copp, Rasmussen, for as long as that line sticks together, is going to get a steady stream of the Sidney Crosby's, Tim Stützle's, Patrick Laine's of the world, which frees Dylan Larkin, Alex DeBrincat, and Lucas Raymond up to play against second lines, second pairings, however the other team's going to deploy it, and quite frankly, pick on them. And they have been. So we knew there was no combination of players the Red Wings would be able to create on the second line that would be an above average NHL second line. So we hypothesized if you create a really sound defensive line to be a matchup line, it would free up the rest of the roster. That's exactly what's been happening. And again, to Lalonde's credit, he tried balancing those two lines for 2 periods of the first game, saw it wasn't working really, and went, nope.
Yeah.
We're loading up the top line and we're going to make it work below that. And ever since then, Detroit has been almost literally unbeatable.
Yeah. So scoring opened up as Austin Czarnik had a great feed streaking down the left side to find Alex DeBrincat, who, as is his job, was at the right place at the right time and banked the goal in. But Czarnik, really, credit to him. That was an excellent, excellent pass. And then after that, it was Ben Chiarot who found a feed from Dylan Larkin. Chiarot snapped it home. We've always said for any, faults that Chiarot might have. And I was watching the start of the game and I thought, Petry and Chiarot, that pairing, not off to a hot start. You lose Malkin on the side and, other small plays. But offensively, you see where they shine and they can contribute. Chiarot inside the other team's blue line is dangerous and snapped one home. Copp got a Petry point shot. Speaking of, offensive contributions, I think this was a good night for Petry. He had, 2 assists in the end? So Copp tipped that one home. And then Perron on the power play. When it looked like Perron's start to the season has been a little bit slower, he banked in that power play goal that ended up being from Larkin and DeBrincat, who continued to put up points and lead the team in scoring. So just like that, the Red Wings went down 4-1 nothing, and then we're up 4-1. And it looked like they were controlling everything over Pittsburgh. Now, Brad's best friend, Erik Karlsson, contributed a lot to the comeback or almost comeback from Pittsburgh, which worried me a little bit because Detroit did have, I believe, a 4-0 comeback last year against Pittsburgh, which ended in the Jake Wallman gritty, which was hilarious. But I thought, I would hate to see that reverse this time. That would be a terrible turn of events. But Karlsson scored one, and then Rust put one in off of a Karlsson shot. And all of a sudden it was 4-3. And then Detroit went into, like you said, Brad, that prevent defense.
Oh, they were well into it at that point. Almost the entire third period.
And that's why, if you look at an overall measure of the game, Pittsburgh might have analytically the balance of outcomes in terms of, deserve to win-o-meter or whatever you look at. But to me, that was Detroit still has to kind of grow out of that. I agree with you completely. I don't think it should have been a foregone conclusion based on the roster that Detroit has, that Pittsburgh should have been dominating like that. Mind you, Erik Karlsson, Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, those guys, they're going to have offense and apply pressure to your team. You're not going to shut them down every game. But to the tune, the magnitude, and how long it went on, you can see Detroit was scrambling a little bit. But they did hang on. Husso made some key saves. Copp got a empty net goal that was reviewed for offside, which I actually think it was offside, but they just didn't have the angles to overturn it. They certainly tried. Like, that review took way, way, way too long, but still. And then Alex DeBrincat got an empty netter as well to give him his 5th goal on the year. So, and that was a power play goal. So Detroit's win held on 6-3. Was it the prettiest win in the world? No, but that has left Detroit among the, through 4 games, leaders in the division and off to a fantastic start that's warranted.
Yeah, they're tied for first in the Eastern Conference. Mm-hmm. The number 1 power play in the NHL as of recording at just under 50%, just like we all predicted. The offense has been what's been carrying this team. The goaltending has been good, but not anything special to this point in the year, and they're still winning. The defense has been mostly good, but you can tell there's still some, warts they're trying to get rid of. Mm-hmm. And every team's going through that right now, so I don't think anybody's panicking, let alone the Red Wings. The only thing that can get in the Red Wings' way right now is the Red Wings, because they're finding the formula that works. And as we saw in the third period against Pittsburgh, when you deviate from that formula, bad things happen. Mm-hmm. Because even watching it, it was so obvious that the Red Wings went from this puck control, transition, high tempo team willing to, take the risks, make the pass, make the pinch, to get puck, glass out, forecheck, lather, rinse, repeat, and gave Pittsburgh. I don't care how good your defensive cycle is. If you give Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin, I'm exaggerating here, of course, but like 15 minutes of ozone time, the puck's going to go in the net a bunch. You could have 5 Nick Lidstroms on the ice. Eventually, some pucks are going to go in when you're defending for that much time. And the Red Wings got off their aggressive offense, fast, whatever you want to call it, approach, and it almost cost them the game. The best defense is a good offense. If you're spending most of that period in Pittsburgh zone still, you're not going to give up any, and hell, you might even pad that lead a little more. That was my only real concern from that game, truthfully. And, this is just the one thing, and a lot of teams do this. I'm not saying the Red Wings are in a bubble on this. The prevent defense is super common, almost entirely ineffective. And I can't believe this is the one thing in hockey coaching circles I can't believe is still a thing, because of how time and time again we see it doesn't work because it's not football. But I digress. Overall, they were the better team, and you could see the formula, I guess is the word I'll keep using, for how this team is going to succeed.
Like, let's boil it down here. What are the issues we're talking about? Detroit has settled into a lead once, maybe twice, and it scared them for a hot second. There are some concerns a little bit about the defensive positioning in their depth defense. The Red Wings aren't perfect. They're not going to be perfect. I don't think they're going to be winning 75% of their games all year. But we're talking about problems that every team in the NHL has at one point or another. We are not talking about, hey, they have a catastrophically poor goaltending situation, or, hey, Mo Seider is out on an island and there's no one else to support him, or, Dylan Larkin and Lucas Raymond are getting ISO'd and this power play is garbage and the penalty kill can't stop anything. Like, we're not talking about that, and we have been doing that essentially every 12 months since we started this show. So, again, sustainable at the levels we see now? No, of course not. No team in the NHL is going to do that. But it's a sign, I think, these first 4 games. I'm being a little dramatic, maybe, but it's a sign that the Red Wings now have the personnel to take the step, and we are seeing the early signs of those first steps being taken.
Well, it's certainly been a dream start for Red Wings and Red Wings fans, and it's all culminating to Saturday with the team that they are tied with for the division lead, the Ottawa Senators. Yeah,
it's been funny watching, every time DeBrincat scores, a bunch of people, because there's the online feud brewing between, or has already brewed between, Red Wings fans and Sens fans. I think the rivalry itself is still brewing, but those two online communities they go at each other's throats. I think it's funny to watch from the sidelines. And every time someone replied saying, oh, Sens in the dirt or whatever, I'm like, they just got Josh Norris back. He scored 2 goals in his debut, and they're in the exact same position as Detroit. I think both fan bases are pretty happy right now. But you're right. It's now leading up to some serious games. And I can't tell you how good it is that the Red Wings can look forward to divisional games and actually not be lying to themselves when we say that is a key game on the schedule and it's still October.
Biggest game of the year. thus far.
Crazy. Before we jump into the individual storylines, highlight between these two games, I have to say, has been Ken and Mick being in midseason form. And Mickey Redmond asking Ken Daniels if R2-D2 was a Star War. It was an incredible clip. I'll link to it. It was hysterical. I don't think the national broadcasts are, terrible. I like what TNT does, especially, but I got to say, we're really blessed Red Wings fans to have, Ken, Mick, and the entire crew at Bally. And every time they're away, it's like, oh, God, we miss them.
I know a lot of Red Wings fans complain about the national broadcasts. There is some bias in those broadcasts, but we also over-exaggerate the flaws of the national broadcast because of what we are used to.
Yeah.
It is hard to keep up to that standard. So even if a national broadcast gives like a B- performance, we're comparing it to, game in, game out A+ performances. So it's obviously always going to feel like a letdown.
So overall notes from that game, I think great to get offense from the defense for whatever faulty start might have been had by Chiarot and Petry. They both factored in a noticeable way offensively. Copp has been putting points up on the board. Those are 2 more goals from him, and the power play stayed hot. So why don't we start by talking about that power play before we get into DeBrincat itself? Detroit has the number 1 power play in the NHL right now. It's through 4 games, yes, but they have the number 1 power play in the NHL right now. At the time of recording, they are at 46.2%. They're not the Edmonton Oilers, so that's not going to be sustainable. But the teams behind them, Toronto at 40, Edmonton at 35.7, Canucks at 33.3, and the Devils at 31.2. I know the Canucks might seem like an outlier, but they're actually starting off really well this season. But Detroit's power play is absolutely no joke. And I think Prashanth pointed it out during the last game, and then they scored 2 more power play goals after that or something like that. Like, this is a team whose power play is clicking. It's not the first time we've seen it click. I think Alex Tanguay, especially once he came in, there was a really red-hot stretch where we were all calling out, like, thank goodness this power play is finally fixed. But it's clicking because they're doing the right things, yes, and the systems are working, yes, but because the personnel is now filled out, and you can have 2 power play units that are at least somewhat dangerous.
And it's not just that the personnel is better, although that is very much the case, because the whole, way a power play succeeds is options, options, options. You've got 5 options on the ice right now because you got DeBrincat and Gostisbehere on the wall with the appropriate handedness. You've got Seider at the top, you've got Perron net front, and you got Larkin in the bumper. Like, all legitimate scoring threats from where they are. But more importantly, they've got it constructed properly. I know it's a small thing, but handedness on a power play matters a lot. How many chances have the Red Wings had off a shot from Larkin in the bumper? Perron scored last night off a Larkin shot in the bumper because they've been, it's a Tampa special. They've just been doing it from the other side because you've got the righty in DeBrincat and you've got the righty in Perron playing net front and half wall and the lefty in the bumper and Larkin, which means that every time that puck is near Perron or DeBrincat, it's a shot threat and it's a pass threat. And then it's a one-time threat for Larkin and it's a rebound threat for DeBrincat, more specifically Perron. And then you go to the top of the key, you got Seider there, the righty, and you got Gostisbehere, the lefty. Shot threat when either of them have the puck. That's why this is working. Obviously, the most important thing is these players on this unit are better than the players on this unit last year. But it's also constructed in the perfect way where there is no keying on one player. As obvious as it sounds to say, okay, you can shadow DeBrincat, take away that one-timer threat. Detroit can still pick you apart on the 4-on-3 otherwise. Not only do they have the top power play unit, but the way you figured they would score the most goals in the power play with the DeBrincat one-timer hasn't happened yet. They're the number 1 power play without even having to use that option yet. Like, they've tried it, but DeBrincat kind of sort of had a goal against New Jersey from that spot. Otherwise, it's been entirely different ways of getting it in the net.
It inspires confidence that even if they don't go the entire season as the number 1 power play, they should be an above average power play. They have the tools, barring, God forbid, bad injury or something devastating the makeup of those power play units. Like, they should be able to perform at a level that'll keep them scoring at a higher than NHL average level, which is good because we talked a lot, and this is the next topic here. We talked a lot all offseason about where the goal is going to come from. Yes, DeBrincat's going to score more, and yes, that will probably have a knock-on effect for Raymond and Larkin, and it seems like that's the case so far. Absolutely, that's the case. Alex DeBrincat's currently second in the NHL in goals, but this entire team is scoring. It's 4 games in, and it's not just from the top line. It is from their depth. Like Compher is contributing. Gostisbehere is contributing. Andrew Copp is contributing. It's early. It is early, so yeah, you might say, holy, Ryan, stop extrapolating over the course of a season. But if the season started and they weren't scoring, they scored half as many goals, then we would absolutely be sitting here saying, yeah, this is what we were concerned about. So for Detroit to come in and surprise, like Alex DeBrincat, 8 points, leads the NHL. Dylan Larkin, 6 points, right behind him. Andrew Copp, 4 points. Shayne Gostisbehere, JT Compher, 4 points. It's none of these guys are Connor McDavid, but Detroit is, through 4 games, scoring at a level that shows you, yeah, that scoring by committee is actually kind of working. So my way too early question is, does this inspire confidence that there is a solution that's actually tangible or tenable over the course of a season in terms of Detroit's offensive output in your mind?
I don't even think I would call it a solution. The word I was using earlier was formula, and I'm sticking to that. The Red Wings had a very specific path to make this offense work. And that's what they've been doing, and it's been working. I don't think they're screwed if the top line cools down, but there will be questions about can Compher and Copp and Rasmussen score enough to lift them up, especially if they're playing the matchup role. The big difference this year might be, well, now all of a sudden that frees up Perron and Sprong on the third line. It's a really damn strong third line to match up against other teams' bottom 6 lines. It's got to be goals by committee, and it's got to be good special teams. This is what they need to do. This is what's been happening. And is it going to continue at this pace for the whole year? Of course not. I don't think anybody realistically thinks DeBrincat's going to score 100 goals. But 40's not out of the question the way he's playing. And, if Larkin only has 1 goal. Lucas Raymond only has 1 goal. And this team's still scoring at that clip. So the solution looks sustainable.
If the defense also keeps contributing, which I don't think we've seen a fully unlocked Mo Seider or Jake Wallman, but Gostisbehere has come in and been exactly what we've hoped he would be. Chiarot and Petry, for whatever faults you might find, have already shown that they're still the players that they always have been, which is they can contribute offensively. Like, this is a group where even without Simon Edvinsson coming in, you should get some support from the blue line as well, not just from your best defensive player too. So there are backstops. Like you said, individual cool-offs are going to happen. Someone tweeted at me, they said, the first time DeBrincat goes on a cold streak, I'm blaming you, Ryan. And I said, yeah, that's absolutely fair. It will be my fault. But he will cool off, but the personnel are there to support it. So are they going to spend the entire season, within 1 goal of Carolina's goal output and among the league leaders in scoring? Probably not. But
where's your faith?
Yeah, I know. Right?
This is the optimistic season for Ryan, I thought. Huh?
Oh, what a pessimist.
Wow, he's so pessimistic all the time, eh?
Don't commandeer my bit. Screw both of you.
You abandoned your bit. Now we're starting our own.
You guys are going to be the optimists?
No, you're the pessimist.
So what are you?
Neutral.
Oh, piss off.
I have to be the optimist then? That's not good.
God help us all. But no, Detroit's going to at least, I think it's fair to set the expectation that, yeah, they can score similar to the power play at a rate that's reasonable and shouldn't be dragging them down the standings. Or at least you can hope for that. So were we too harsh in the preseason to say where these goals are going to come from? I don't think so. I think it's still a question that has to be answered over the course of the year, but this is extremely, extremely promising to start. Now let's just jump into what I think is the most exciting news after 4 games. Yeah, Detroit being 3-1 is great. Yes, winning those games and demonstrating your ability across some top teams, especially in Tampa and Pittsburgh, is great. But through 4 games, the Red Wings have someone who's leading the NHL in points scoring in Alex DeBrincat. 8 points at the time of recording, leads the entire league. I know it's 4 games in. I should just tattoo that across my forehead for this episode. But you have a points leader. What a start. What a homecoming. Could you have asked for better for Alex DeBrincat?
No. This is beyond what we could have hoped. I think, what did we set the over-under for his goal total at the year? 34.5? Like, we were optimistic that he would improve upon last year, but not like this. He's got a realistic chance to hit 40, creep up on 50 the way he's going. And obviously the Red Wings are using him very heavily right now. And, the attrition will come in towards the end of the season because he did not play this role in Ottawa. And when he was in Chicago, he had Kane, he had Taves, he had a lot of help that, hey, as much as we love Dylan Larkin isn't prime Patrick Kane in terms of offensive generation. So got to keep that in the back of our minds this whole time. He does have that fluky goal against Tampa. He does have an empty netter. So
they count.
They count, and you have to be playing well enough to put yourself in those situations.
Yeah.
And when you're an opportunistic scorer like DeBrincat is, yeah, these things are going to happen from time to time. If you're a volume shooter, guess what? You're going to get some lucky ones. That comes with the territory. It is, how do I phrase this? We've spent the last 3 years smashing this table going, this rebuild can't end until the Red Wings get a couple elite scorers. And I don't know if DeBrincat falls into the category of elite, but this is a glimpse into what the Red Wings could look like with that. Because so far he's been that. And only one. You add another one, you can see the difference that makes.
Second in the NHL in goals with 5. He trails only Austin Matthews, who started this season with 2 hat tricks, which great start for Austin Matthews. But all in all, it is a little jarring to see so many Red Wings near the top of scoring charts, and especially right at the top of the point scoring chart. And yeah, like if Alex DeBrincat came in and was like, I'm a 25 goal guy, I have to adjust to the season. He started the season kind of slow, maybe only assists to start. I wouldn't have sounded any alarm bells because it would have been so reasonable. Like you said, Brad, played in a different system, played with different talent, played in a different role. Yeah, he didn't have Josh Norris last year. Maybe that contributed to part of why he didn't score as much. Ottawa fans will all tell you that the effort and the finish wasn't there last year, which I think is actually fair for them to say. But he came in and every single knock against him or something that would have been a reasonable excuse for a slower start, he dispelled all of those notions and has come out like the kind of guy who's wanted to play for the Detroit Red Wings for his entire life and is playing on the top line with 2 of their best players. So I think Detroit does have one of those elite goal scorers or someone who can put up 40 goals, which that's all you can really ask for. So there's work to be done yet on the scoring front and the elite talent front, but DeBrincat is leading the way, and that's the best storyline that you could have asked for as a Red Wings fan.
Yeah, I think his situation in Ottawa was very much an oil and water situation. He never asked to really be there. He didn't really get put in the position that was most advantageous and beneficial for him to really pop off. So the fact that he was able to come over to Detroit, have the whole summer to acclimatize, he couldn't have been put in a better spot to start off the season as he has, and it's paid off in spades so far. So really, it's a dream start for the Red Wings and for Alex DeBrincat.
Joe Veleno got moved up to the third line and was paired with Sprong and Perron, which I've noticed. I've been watching his game pretty closely. I think a lot of Red Wings fans have, and I've liked a lot of what I've seen from Joe Veleno. Obviously, he hasn't shown up on the score sheet, and so I think he has just the 1 assist so far. So we're not talking about Joe Veleno being among the team leaders, but I don't know. Am I wrong in saying that I've liked the steps that he's taken in his game?
Joe Veleno is one of those guys, it's hard to pick apart his game. He's well-rounded. He does all the things right. He just seems to lack that scoring touch, plainly. He doesn't have the feel for the offensive zone that, a Dylan Larkin and Alex DeBrincat, a JT Compher might have. Beyond that, yeah, what is there to complain about? Defensively, he's been great. Face-offs, he's been great. Puck battles, he's been great. He does have those moments, like on the Gostisbehere goal, given the opportunity, he'll make the right play. It doesn't come naturally to him, but he's not devoid of it. So put in the right spot, he can thrive. And you get 2 natural scorers like Sprong and Perron on either side of them. Maybe this is what unlocks that end of the game for him.
Yeah, I think it's a good sign that he's been trusted to move up into that role and have those 2 guys, because you can't have Sprong and Perron be erased offensively. That's just too much talent to not be contributing in a depth space. So it's an opportunity for Joe Veleno to come in and say, yeah, maybe you're not going to be the primary driver of offense, but you have 2 guys who can pull the trigger and or facilitate, as Perron is really adept with doing. So if he can make the most of this, then maybe that's how he sticks in this role. I don't know that he's going to for the reasons that you stated, Brad, but for all the other things that he's doing in his game, I think he's doing it well. Face-offs is a really good point. Puck battles across the entire team, I find they're doing a really good job this year. Like much, much better than what we've seen in the past. And, this is a lot of coach speak. Like hockey's won in a 1 foot by 1 foot box or whatever metric that coach wants to use for that specific speech. But they're coming away from a lot of 50-50 puck battles or, even less than 50-50 puck battles and retaining possession or forcing a turnover. And those are the little things that add up to the kind of goals that aren't the prettiest, but still count all the same on the scoreboard. And over an 82-game season, that's what you need to be doing to win those games. So that's, for me, a coaching thing. Part of it is the players, too, like Lucas Raymond getting a lot stronger. Yes, you are going to get better with puck battles, but I've seen a lot of turnaround this season specifically from Detroit in that space. Well, I've lingered on the excitement of Detroit's success so far. I am absolutely milking those 4 games for what they're worth, but we've reached the end of that. A look ahead to the next 2 games on the road against Ottawa on Saturday, 1 p.m. Eastern, and at home against Calgary at 5 p.m. Eastern. It doesn't need to be stated, but that Ottawa game is absolutely key. Like you said, Evan, that's the biggest game of the year so far. And that was the case even before the season started. Like, let's say both teams started terribly, it still would have been a huge game because they're kind of fighting through the same phase of their rebuild, and they're both hoping for a wild card spot. But, Ottawa off to the same start. Like I said, closer to the top of the show, they're also very happy with how their team has performed, and they're in the exact same position as Detroit. So that's a game that's going to carry a lot of weight, and it's funny because it's going to be a direct carryover of those 2 games last season where Ottawa thumped Detroit.
This feels like a very symbolic week, doesn't it?
It does.
You have 2 teams last night who have been, for the better part of the last 2 decades, running the Eastern Conference, or at least been consistent contenders with Washington and Pittsburgh. You have the upstarts, Detroit and Ottawa, who knocked both of them off last night. And then those 2 upstarts are playing each other this Saturday to determine early in the season who's the more legitimate playoff threat. So it's kind of fun. I know the NHL schedule makers have nothing to do with the storylines like this, but this almost feels too perfect of a week.
Sometimes they do, but yeah, things have fallen together in a way where it's really contributed to the drama. I wonder if this is what it's just like to have a good team, that there are more storylines in general. And I want us to look back. I want us to bottle up this moment and look back on it when we're in like January, February, in the throes of the season and games just come and pass and they just feel like, oh God, why does the NHL go past 60 games in the regular season?
That is a great point, but we'll talk about that later.
A different time, yeah.
Yeah. I think you had it right with your first point. I think this is just how it is when your team is good. Because I know I started the episode saying this, but it's probably worth repeating after that point. It feels like games matter now.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like it's sustainable. Who knows how huge taking those 2 points off Tampa and taking those 2 points off Pittsburgh, 2 teams potentially on the playoff bubble, could be come January, February, whatever you want to call it. And then Ottawa, who's the more likely team to be in this same boat, it's massive.
Storylines aren't as interesting when you just get beat down by the better teams all the time. You can't really develop a rivalry. You're talking about, oh, what's this prospect doing? The prospect profiles start up.
Yeah.
You're wondering where you're going to be in the draft lottery. When you're actually seeing a competitive team, a lot of these storylines just happen organically. And we need to, yeah, you're right, Ryan. We do need to bottle this up and remember it, because weeks like this can be fleeting, especially in a professional sport like hockey.
It feels like the barometer as content creators for how good of a season this is if we have less than 10 Macklin Celebrini conversations by the end of the season.
We've already talked about him.
Mine has always been, when do we start the prospect profiles? That's sort of always been the measuring stick. And, there's probably been years we could have started a lot earlier. We just refused to do it because we still had hope.
I'm not starting prospect profiles while I still have Christmas decorations up.
So
there's years we could have, though.
March?
No. We're like 2 weeks into January. They're down.
Yeah,
but you're sicko. You're like December 26th. You take them.
Yeah,
down.
they're down.
Oh my God. Anyways, that's Detroit's upcoming schedule. So Ottawa, Calgary, we're going to be coming at you late Sunday evening after the Calgary game. So we will have a recap of the next 2 games for next episode. All right, the Patrick Kane rumors. Obviously, Patrick Kane has been linked to the Detroit Red Wings by way of Alex DeBrincat for a long time. Former Chicago teammates, one of the most efficient connections in the NHL when they played together. it's no wonder that they're going to be linked. And Frank Saravalli of Daily Faceoff has reported that that is still the case, that Detroit is among the teams who may be in the mix. I think Buffalo is still the favorite. You know, teams that are going to be challenging for the Cup are going to be the favorite because Kane isn't going to want to come in and play for a team that's going to be wallowing like Chicago is now. But, you know, if Detroit has that connection with DeBrincat, that's one check on that box. And the second part of it is, if they are a team that's looking to at least challenge in the playoffs, then is that sufficient? The next part of it is money and term and what's he actually looking for and how good is Patrick Kane after the hip resurfacing, the surgery, etc. That's a different question. But I think it is, based on what we've heard and what's actually been reported, it's still a very real thing that's a possibility.
Well, looking at the standings and checking where Detroit and Buffalo is, I just want to say it's BS that Buffalo's still the favorites.
2 points.
We're
Only
talking
2
about
points, Buffalo.
Yeah, but we're talking about a first place team versus a last place team in the Atlantic right now. Just saying.
Yeah.
The question I have with Patrick Kane is, if he was to sign with the Red Wings today, he's not playing with Alex DeBrincat on Saturday.
That's my biggest question mark with this whole thing too, is you're not putting Patrick Kane on your first line.
Yeah.
You're not. Yeah. Larkin, Raymond, and DeBrincat have all been playing great. They're working well together. You're not breaking that line up. The only scenario I could see where they could play together is if you put Patrick Kane in Gostisbehere's spot on the first power play unit to free up Gostisbehere for the second unit, and then to allow Patrick Kane to play a little bit with DeBrincat, but I don't even know if I'm doing that for sure. I mean, it's Patrick Kane. You probably do that. But is Patrick Kane going to come to Detroit because of Alex DeBrincat if he's not going to play on a line with Alex DeBrincat?
I can see a situation like, let's say the Red Wings, their season plays out immaculately, and they are a playoff team through and through. Maybe they hold on to a third divisional seed or a wild card spot, whatever. Like, it might get dicey for a second, but they actually keep up a reasonable pace of play and scoring, and they make it this year and surprise most people. That's great. Then if you're Steve Yzerman, you're looking into how do you make the most out of this without breaking the bank? Well, you're not going to go out and trade all of your prospects for a rental at the deadline. But a rental that only costs you some cap space is a different story. We know the cap next year is going to be, 87.7 is the current projection. So plus or minus whatever you want to take there, but it's going to go up still. You take a look at Patrick Kane, and come playoff time, maybe lines get jumbled up then. Maybe he offers a depth scoring opportunity. Maybe you sign him for multiple years to say, hey, you know, you might not be playing with DeBrincat all the time, but on the power play, we'll stick you with him. And sometimes we just want to see what we can make at this playoff run. So like you said, Brad, yeah, there are ways this could fit in, but it all depends on, you know, what's Kane looking for in terms of money and term. And if he is required to be glued to Alex DeBrincat, then I'm not sure that I'm doing that if I'm Detroit. But worth keeping an eye on. Okay. Moving on, let's take some more NHL news. Or actually, let's go overseas. Axel Sandin-Pellikka. Man, 5 goals already. He is going to be knocking on the door next year. I like that he's taken on this role of this year's Red Wings, you know, Swedish prospect who's just dominating, but this guy looks like exactly what we thought he would be offensively from the blue line.
Yes, this is another shining example of how on point our prospecting is.
Yeah, we've never messed up. We've only been correct.
Nailed it every time without any flaws whatsoever. And
Don't check the tapes.
We are only judging our results right now by Axel Sandin-Pellikka.
Well, yeah. And you know what?
We're chopping it right there. We're not even going to go all the way up to pick 9. We're just focusing on pick 17. Nailed it.
I like the Nate Danielson pick. That's just me. Let's take some NHL news here. Alex Ovechkin. Is he slowing down? 2 straight games for the first time in his career with 0 shots on goal.
I'm going to answer that question with a question. Is he slowing down, or are the Capitals bad?
Well, he's been on bad Capitals teams.
But
when he was
like
20 years old.
Yeah.
It's still nuts to me that he's never had 2 consecutive games of 0 shots.
That's crazy.
That's unbelievable.
To be fair, and I know I mentioned this to Ryan before we started recording, he had a ton of shots in those 2 games. They just were all either blocked or missed the net.
He didn't look the best. And, you know, Father Time is undefeated. So I'm wondering if this isn't just, you know, off-season hangover. the older you get, the harder it is to shake off the rust. Like, I don't think Perron's having the best start to the year, but he's no less talented than he was last year, I don't think. So they might just need a little bit more runway. He's 70-something goals away. I just don't see him not breaking the Gretzky goal record. He'll stay around as long as he needs to.
Yeah, and he's still got 3 or 4 years left on that contract, whatever it is. The thing that I think is going to hinder him the most, and to answer my own question, I don't think it's fully an Ovechkin problem. I think the team is probably the most to blame, because we all know what Ovi does on the power play, and everybody's been saying, okay, yeah, he's going to get older, he's going to slow down, but he's always going to have that one-timer. He never moves on the power play, so it doesn't even matter. As long as he has his shot, you can pencil him in for 30 a year at least. But the reason that worked on Washington's power play forever was because if you isolated him, Oshie and Karlsson and Backstrom would just torch you in the 4-on-3 on the rest of the power play. Just dummy them, and if they're not doing that anymore, teams have all the reason in the world to isolate Ovechkin. So I haven't watched enough of the Capitals games to really, truly form a solid opinion on what's happening here, but my educated guess is that it's a little bit of Ovechkin slowing down, but a lot of the Capitals slowing down.
Yeah, it has to. Like, it must be so difficult to get off to a good start when you're not young and spry and your team is absolutely one of the worst in the league. So
I would have no idea what that's like.
No, you've never been young and spry. I think you were born 35 years old.
You might be right.
The way your knees creak and your back makes noises.
It's a sacrifice I make to be a very average golfer.
A very average golfer and above average podcaster.
That's right. Yeah. That's how I would label myself.
I think I'm a below average podcaster and a terrible golfer, so you got me beat.
Okay, fair enough.
I did end the year breaking 100, though.
Yeah.
So I'm happy with that. Okay, more NHL news before we jump into overtime. The NHL has been polling GMs and teams across the league on what their opinion is of changing the format of the NHL draft, and not the way they make picks themselves in terms of the order or how many picks per round, etc. And no, this isn't an abolish the draft conversation. I'm not doing that. It's where do you host the draft? So
the Sphere.
Yeah, the Vegas Sphere. I wouldn't be surprised if they try in the future, but right now what the NHL is actually hoping to do, or looking into doing, I should say, that might solve a couple of problems, is do the remote draft style that other leagues do, wherein teams are all at their home base. Think of the NFL, where you get, video feeds into their war rooms or whatever you want to call it. And they call in their picks, and then, and I hate this, the commissioner makes the picks. Or sometimes people come in and make the picks on behalf of the teams. And essentially the NHL is gauging interest in doing that. And the problems they're trying to solve here is, one, teams feel like they can't actually do a lot of business on the draft floor because everyone else is around. And the moment you pick up the phone, the cameras are on you, and people, reporters, whatever, are snooping. And secondly, they also hate how close the draft is to free agency. And it's a big ordeal, traveling everyone out there, getting settled, having your meetings, doing the draft, wrapping up, getting everyone home, getting settled, and then getting together for free agency. Like, there's not a lot of time. If the draft is on the 27th or 28th, you have a few days, and then all of a sudden it's July 1st for free agency. So teams are trying to buy themselves a little bit of leeway in terms of planning for free agency, or at least that's the idea. Now, what does this mean for the fan experience in the building, and what does this mean for the fan experience at home? That's a different question. But what do you guys think about the idea of doing a remote style draft?
I can't make up my mind on this one because I see the advantages for both. One, I love the pageantry of the prospect going up on stage, getting his picture taken with the important members of the organization. Sometimes they bring up some fan favorite players, etc. They're the only league that does that, and it does make for a really cool aesthetic when the player's on stage. Now, that being said, from a entertainment, theatrics perspective, the NHL draft is lagging behind the other leagues because when you have less, congestion is not the right word, but we'll call it less logistic hurdles, you can do more with it. Like the NFL draft specifically, I hate that it's Roger Goodell handing it out, but you move a pack of that team's fans up near the stage. Just the prospect comes out onto the stage, gets his jersey, he's isolated, it's efficient, it's cool. It makes for a really, really unique fan experience and a really, really unique experience for the player, and I like that. So I think what I ultimately settle on is whatever they do, up the fan experience, essentially, from a TV standpoint and from an in-person standpoint, whether that's moving all the draft tables backstage or decentralizing. I'd be okay with that too. Just the one opinion I hold strongly on this, and I will not back down, and if the NHL does this, everybody will universally hate it, if they do decentralize it. Not Gary Bettman.
I agree.
Buoy.
I cannot stand commissioners making the picks. It is the dweebest thing that other leagues do. I can't stand it. It's so annoying. No one cares about the commissioner.
What they should do, every team, this is what I would do. If you decentralize it, because again, all the logistic reasons they want to do this that you laid out makes perfect sense to me, and I understand why teams would want that. It makes a lot of sense from a behind-the-scenes standpoint. Every team picks a representative.
Carey Price has to do all 32.
But
You're such an asshole.
Bobby Clark comes out for the Flyers. No, but it could be a celebrity, doesn't have to be like an A-grade celebrity. Like we as Red Wings fans, it'd be cool if like, I don't know, Dave Coulier or
Kodak
something.
Black comes out for the Florida
Hell
Panthers.
yeah. But yeah, like Dave Coulier or Nick Lidstrom or just someone that has like ties to Detroit, to the Red Wings, and hopefully someone with a bit of personality. And
Marshall Mathers comes out just as the prospect's name and leaves.
That would be the best case scenario, just so we're all clear. But yeah, and then each fan base still gets, for us, we'll call it the Detroit spin on the pick, but then you can really up the theatrics of it all, which I am fully in favor of.
I feel the same in that I heard it and I know there was a lot of strong reactions to it, but I think it would suck to miss out on the opportunity to go and be on the draft floor and, from a media perspective, but from a fan perspective, I can see benefits to both. But the only way I would really prefer it is if, Brad, like there was some kind of presentation to this and it wasn't you didn't just make it more sterile for the sake of logistics. Because at the end of the day, unfortunately to say, Brad is exactly right. This is an entertainment industry. You can't just strip away something that is supposed to be entertaining in the offseason just because some execs want things to be a little bit more convenient, because then where does that stop? So I don't love it. I don't hate it. If it's the commissioner making the picks, I can't stand it. It's akin to when, owners are the first ones to get the trophy in other sports. I can't stand that. I don't care if they own the team. Give it to the captain first. But if they make the change, they're going to have to get creative. Do I have a lot of faith that the NHL can do that? That's a different question.
There's one huge point we're missing too. And I know not everybody listening to this is an NFL fan, but I know a lot of you are. So for those that aren't, go find a clip of the NFL draft. And I want you to pay attention not to Goodell handing the jersey to the player on stage. Look at the crowd. Look at how many people are there. You know what the NHL's missing out on right now with their draft process? Money. You make this a more fan-centric experience like the NFL does, and the NFL does a masterful job of it. They are going to make a ton more money off the draft.
Well, it's crazy. I was in Nashville pre-COVID, let's say, when they had the draft. And there were people there a week before.
Yeah, it's an event.
Nashville's an amazing place to be regardless. But people are like, we're here for the draft. And it wasn't for another 5 days. Like, that's how big it is for the NFL. I think if the NHL is looking at easy wins, if they don't want to totally restructure this, limit the number of people who are going up on stage, because teams bring up a freaking busload of people and it slows everything down. We don't have it takes a while to get the prospects to the stage. They got to shake everybody's hand, which is fantastic. At some point, they'll be able to do that anyway. To me, they need to make the draft faster and they need to make it more fan-centric, because nobody wants to sit through 2.5 hours of a first round.
Even if you want the teams to still be there, the change I would make no matter what, to further Evan's point, the players, the teams, get the hell backstage. If you want those cool draft floor conversations, you can send cameras back there. The NFL does it. The whole draft floor, stage and fans. Because again, the one thing the NFL does that I love is they have sections. The Red Wings section. You could have the Leafs section, the Senators section, whatever. And then when that team's picking, you shuffle them right up to the stage.
Yep.
It's awesome.
There literally is a playbook on how to do this better, but nobody is literate, I suppose.
I think it's really funny, and this is because we just did this, and so that's why my brain is thinking this way, but it's very analogous to a wedding. Like Brad said, whether you leave this remote or in person as is, you settled on some really good points there, Evan. Like, you need to make this more efficient. And the part that reminds me of a wedding is when you're getting married, you want all the most important people in your life to make a speech, but you can't do that at the end of the day because then the speeches will go on forever. And everyone else there doesn't care. Everyone else there doesn't care. So I know NHL execs, it's a very like insular group. It's the old boys club, whatever. And they all need to pay their respects and pleasantries or whatever. You thank the host and you congratulate the Vegas Golden Knights. And if unfortunately someone passed, you recognize the fact that they passed. And that's all worthwhile stuff to talk about. Like genuinely on an objective level, yeah, you want to acknowledge that. You want to be respectful because you as an exec from the New Jersey Devils, this might be your only time where you're addressing your colleagues over in San Jose or whatever it might be. But at the end of the day, you have to sacrifice that fluff and the stuff that no one else cares about, which is the fans who are tuning in or attending, like Brad said in their sections, because it just doesn't matter to them. You have to sacrifice those things for the sake of the entertainment product. You tell them, you go up there and say, don't do the pleasantries. We'll do something in the beginning for the team who won the cup, and we'll do something in the beginning for the cities that's hosting. That's amazing. And if there's a memorial, we'll do that at the beginning, and we'll cover everyone. You can't all be spending 3 minutes doing it. Also, have your shit together and know who's making the pick and what they're actually saying, please. And if you must bring up 20 people, do it quick.
Not 20 people. You're bringing up 5.
Whatever it has to be, right? So whether they go with the remote product or the as is, I think no matter what, like, yeah, logistically they have to create some more time for free agency. But as you said, Evan, there's a playbook out there that other leagues are doing, especially the NFL. Make this a better thing for fans in general. Because you know what? It is a different planet, the amount of interest that's in the NFL draft and the amount of engagement and hype compared to what the NHL does. But the amount of like want to engage with it is all there in the NHL. 50% of the show is based on the draft so far because of how bad the Red Wings have been.
Yeah, like if the NFL is 50 times more popular than the NHL, obviously their draft's going to be a bigger deal. But their draft is 100 times more successful than the NHL's. It is not equivalent, and it is not just because it's a bigger fan base thing. It's because the NFL draft is a better product.
Hire us, NHL. I don't think there are people out there who are more tuned into the NHL draft over the past near decade than we are.
But more importantly, as Lions fans and a Bills fan who have been picking very high in the NFL draft for a long time, we are very tuned into the NFL draft.
Please just make it better. Anyways.
Well, we have to go to the next draft because it's, I'll say, air quotes, rumored to be in Vegas. I would strongly believe it will be in Vegas.
If they can find a location that works in terms of timing, that's also part of this.
The Sphere.
I feel like they have a backlog of people who want to sign up for a spot at the Sphere.
Like us, Wing Wheel podcast night at
the Sphere.
At the Sphere.
Can you imagine the entire Sphere is just a 3D silhouette of Evan's head just as we're recording?
Inside and outside. It's just Evan's face. It's going to be the picture that Rowan keeps posting online of you eating the hot dog in the upper bowl at the LCA.
If that's what it takes, I'm willing to sacrifice.
I also I haven't posted it yet, some pictures and videos of you looking for your ball on the links course that we played, and you look really grumpy in them. And I think that would be a really good one too.
You also need to be far more specific because that sounds like almost every time I go play golf.
That's fair. All right, folks, we're going to jump into overtime on this episode of the Winged Wheel podcast because we can go on forever about Evan's facial expressions. We're going to get into overtime, which is a segment where we take questions and comments from our listeners and continue our discussion. Overtime is brought to you by our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast if you want to support the show. You get benefits like entering into our giveaway of 2 tickets to every Red Wings home game that I talked about earlier in the episode. You also get access to our Patreon exclusive Discord, and you get to tune into all of our bonus content. For example, we record a bonus overtime episode right after these main ones. It helps us plan Winged Wheel podcast nights at the LCA. It helps us support the Jamie Daniels Foundation. It helps us make this show bigger and better and produce more content like Expected by Whom, a show hosted by Prashant Iyer and Sean Shapiro. Be sure to check them out. So again, patreon.com/Winged Wheel podcast if you want to join the Dub Club. All right, let's take some questions from our patrons. Coyote season tickets to anywhere but Tempe. This is more of a statement, but he mentions Brendan Shanahan, so I'm reading it out. Says the only thing I can compare DeBrincat's arrival and immediate impact to is the trade that brought Shayne to the Red Wings in '96. If even a sliver of organizational success follows what the Wings got from that deal, you three won't be producing content with prospect profiles before May anytime soon. First of all, just seeing that written out made me almost emotional to think about us talking about hockey in late April. And I think it raises a good point. You know, something that I've talked about a lot on the show is, yes, you can't see steps 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in the so-called Yzer plan right now because there's just too much uncertainty and moves that have to be made. But one thing I do firmly believe in the NHL, two things, is one, things can change on a dime, and they often do more than we give credit for, which is hard to come to grips with because you can't see it, and so you're scared that it won't. But two, success begets success. Winning begets winning, and it also encourages other players to want to come be part of your program. The Red Wings already have the legacy. They have the prolific GM that people seem to have a good reputation, or they hold him in high regard and they want to play for him. And that is a, stark contrast based on the years where people wouldn't want to come play for Mike Babcock. So can winning now really change the floor plan for the Red Wings, and can it encourage really meaningful players? I'm talking maybe not all Elias Pettersson level, but not crazy to talk about Elias Pettersson to come over and be part of this. Am I right in saying that, or is that just too optimistic?
You're right, but it's also too optimistic. Does that make sense?
I just have to reclaim my title.
You know what I mean, though? Because
yeah,
as good as the Red Wings process might be, and this absolutely could be justification for the Elias Petterssons of the world, you're still going to be competing against 31 other teams, is the reality of it. And every scenario you look at is always going to be more unlikely than it is likely, but it at least, what I will say, is gets the Red Wings to the table. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a big step up based on what it's been in the past.
Yeah, just ask Steven Stamkos.
One day we'll stop hitting ourselves with that one. Listening to Ryan Hanna in the shower says, beating Pittsburgh is always fun. I'm not going to lie, I'm a bit nervous about the Ottawa game on Saturday. They've looked really strong, and now they have Josh Norris back as well. Anyhow, I saw the Athletics article on redrafting 2020, and Raymond was at 5. I'd personally have him no lower than 3, probably at 2. Just wondering what thoughts are about that. Stay fresh, cheese bags.
My thoughts is don't read the 2019 one. That's the closest I've ever come to throwing my phone.
Yeah, I think redrafts are tough, but that one was a lot of hard work goes into those, so I'm not trying to disparage anyone who writes it, but I do think both of those, the Red Wings are shortchanged a little bit.
Yeah, Raymond at 5. I don't have him that low. I think he probably sticks at 4. You could maybe make a case for 3.
Mike Caviani says, okay, so since this is recording before the upcoming showdown with Ottawa, please tell us all how to react to either outcome on Saturday afternoon so I can prepare my emotions accordingly. I think the process matters more than the outcome in this game. They're divisional rivals. They're going to play more than once over the course of the season, so you can't put the balance of the entire year on this. Like, if Detroit wins, they're not an automatic playoff team, and if they lose, they're not automatically going to be in the Macklin-Celebrini conversation by January, right? But what you should look out for is if they come in and compete like they did against Pittsburgh, or if they come in and compete like they did against Ottawa late season last year. Those are two very, very different things in my mind.
Yeah, just the one thing it cannot be is a repeat of last year.
Cletus says, at this rate, I'm convinced it's in the team's best interest to waive Petry and put Chiarot in the press box, or find a trade. You bring up Edvinsson and Johansson or any other Grand Rapids D-man who's ready. He thinks 2 rookies would be better than those 2. Is it just me? I think Edvinsson needs to find a way in. And I think the team is already cycling between Hall and Mata to start. We might, and Petry as well. You might see Chiarot enter that conversation, but I don't know that he's going to be scratched very often. I don't know that after games like last game, you're going to find a lot of encouragement to move him out. For example, they did contribute offensively for whatever defensive woes there were. But I agree that Edvinsson needs to come in at the very least. I think there's just too much musical chairs of defensemen who probably any given game have a reason to be scratched to just not have Edvinsson in that mix in my mind. Beyond that, like, yeah, Johansson, what you'd hope would have a spot eventually. So
the one thing is too, at least when you get into the thick of the playoff race, continuity is important.
Yeah.
You can't run this rotation for the whole season.
Orange Sunquist says, do you guys think a team should be able to choose if they want to decline a penalty shot in favor of a 2-minute power play? Up 2 goals halfway through the third with Copp shooting. I would rather have the 2-minute power play. I think the chance of converting on the power play is probably equal or greater than Copp scoring on the penalty shot. If they don't convert, then that's 2 minutes off the clock.
I'd be cool with giving the teams the option with the knowledge knowing they would take the penalty shot every time.
You kind of have to statistically. I don't know, like even the worst players in the NHL, like you think about Red Wings who didn't contribute for a while. There was a moment in time where Luke Glendening was actually a guy to go to at the shootout because he had a little stretch where he was good there. So I think you should give him the option, but yeah, I agree. Most teams are always going to take the penalty shot. What do you think about giving them the penalty shot and then the power play after?
That's too much.
Too much?
Too much. Because that's essentially a double minor.
I have to, call it the fact, respect to those referees, 2 penalty shots in 2 games. I'm very, very, very pro penalty shot and very anti shootout.
The refs are just helping the entertainment value.
That's right. Dead Aim says offense so far has been better than expected. Who, if anyone, do you think still needs to improve in this very young season, whether it be passing, shooting, or shooting instead of passing, or zone entry? Go Wings.
Perron can't just be a power play specialist.
No, although it is helped if he's not on the top line, I will say. Like if that's... He needs to be scoring from a depth role, but, we're not talking about Perron on the top line holding Raymond back like last year. Like, Perron earned that spot, but Lalonde didn't hesitate to move him down this year. What's the Mata says, was skeptical at first, but I'm now a huge fan of Kostin and Fisher. Great shutdown penalty killers and fourth-line guys as veterans that won't complain about time on ice. What do you guys think about their offensive upside? Kostin seemed pretty explosive at times with his skating. Could he be a guy that may be moving up to a scoring line? He's not going to move up to a scoring line, and I am though curious to see what they can do over the balance of the season. It's only 4 games for them, so for your fourth liners to not be contributing a lot that's fine. I do think there is more to them, and I'm curious to see how that can balance out over the course of a year. What happens when Fabry gets healthy, though, is a different question, and how that affects that.
Yeah, I have, without getting into too long of an answer, I have more faith in Kostin than I do Fisher from the offensive output side of things.
I think it's okay to have guys where their line does nothing, if you know what I mean. Like,
yeah,
doesn't really generate any offense. Nothing bad happens when they're on the ice. I think that's completely okay.
Net negative or net positive, I should say, for Detroit when it was the net negative was what was the default for lower lines. So yeah. Pock says, I'm glad there's a screenshot of Detroit having the number 1 power play in the NHL. What's the longest you see this lasting, and do you think Detroit makes it out of October in the top 5?
I'll call it unlikely, but hey, season of optimism.
I can see October for sure. Streakiness holds on a little bit in the NHL. Beyond that, then that is going to be a different story, I think. It's not impossible, but we would have to see a completely different version of the Red Wings in terms of not being streaky with your special teams, which has been the story of the last however many years, and that's whether they were bad or good. So October, I can see it happening. If it's in November, then I'm starting to make late April, or I'm starting to cancel my late April plans. Okay, that's enough of this episode of the Winged Wheel podcast. I'm afraid that if I talk any longer, I'll be way, way, way too optimistic, and I'll just have way too much content that could be used to clip me later for when things go sour. But we want to thank everyone for tuning in. What a start to the season. Thank you all so much. If you're a new listener to the show, welcome. And if you're a listener of old, isn't this fun? If you want to support the show, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. And if you want to go the extra mile and support the show in a different way, leave us a rating wherever you listen to your pods, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, wherever, and subscribe. Also tell a friend. It does make a big difference. It really helps us out when you do those things. To all of our Patreon supporters, we couldn't do this without you. And to all of you who want to come out and see more of the Winged Wheel podcast and enjoy the Red Wings dominating, Winged Wheel podcast night at the LCA, Saturday, November 4th. Not just my birthday. Watch me turn 30 and fall and wither away into dust, but also have some fun, see Ken and Chris Osgood, and watch the Red Wings hopefully beat the Bruins that day. So to all of our Patreon supporters, again, thank you. And to our name level supporters, Arjun Shanker, Yves Bartels on behalf of the Sarah Grand Foundation, Aikfer, Samuel Soderholm, Icon, Brad's Lord and Savior, Bradley Cleveland, Glenn Brabham, Everybody Loves Raymond, Croner's Left Knee, Sea Lion, Keenan O'Donohue, Yanni Burgers, Meals on Wheels, Matthew M. Rice, 05 Kinsler 05, Admiral Matt S. of the Cheesebag Navy, Brian J. Bauer, Carl Brutanen Nanalewski, Citizen High Five, Clip Clop Nene, Connor Scovey, Coyote season tickets and anywhere but Tempe, Craig Kibble, Denny's Gamer Girl, Derek Enstam, DJ Denton, Exquisitine Buble Schwinslow, Give Blood Fight Probert, Hockeytown Love, Hockeytown Matt, Hassam Al Qassem, Jay Gollum, Jacob Turner, Joel Miranda, Kalen Wood, King Tone, Marcus, Marlon Winchester, Matt K. Cannon Fodder, the Cheesebag Army, Matt McKay, Michael Edlund, Never Go Full Kyle, Newhorn, Who Dis, R.A., Red 3, Ryan Hubbard, Scott Martin, Scree and Lube, That's What I Appreciates About You, Wallman's Elite Dancing D, Brian Vasha, Yzerman Stan, General Andy Bohan of the Cheesebag Army, Sam Bankson, Adam Rose, Axel Sandy Pelika, Big Cheese, Brad Simmons, Chuck Buffchest, the Tarpless Goon, Commander Ben Barron of the Cheesebag Space Force, Connor Leighton, Corey Prida, Darren Fick, D-Boss Snip Show. Folks, do you love lemons? Also, do you love butts? Then please try our new sponsor. I'm not reading the rest of that. Frank Stanley, Gene Sullivan, Griffey Boy, Henrik Robert Deeks, James Laporte, James Pridemore, Jeremiah Dobo, Jam Rhapsody, John Evans Derogatory, John Engels, Josh Yelton, Kevin McCracken, Quaz, Linda Hull, Maximilian, Melissa Erickson, Norris Sider. Now this looks like a job for cheesebags. Ophelia, Steven, the Hotag, the Mexinadian, the Hat 123, Winging It in San Diego, formerly AA Ron, and your second favorite patron. Thank you all so very much. We'll be back with you Sunday night.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to check out wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find links to other ways to support the show, such as Patreon, official podcast apparel, and more. And don't forget to follow the show on Twitter at Winged Wheel Pod. And of course, the hosts at Brad Crisco, at Ryan Hanna WWP, and at Hockeytown Evan.